In this tutorial, we're going to cover InDesign Chapter 12, Classroom in a Book, Working with Transparency, and we're going to be creating a menu. So let's go ahead, find your start file for Chapter 12. Let's do a file, Save As, and let's call it 12 Menu, and save. Alright, so it appears like we've got a big long page. So we're actually going to do create quite a few things here. We've got quite a few layers that are already built for us. So we'll be working with those as part of this process. So let's go ahead, go to Window and Layers if you don't already have it. We're going to make sure we want to import something onto this layer called Background. So we'll make sure on the background one that it is blue. That's where our little pen is. And our icon is on. Let's go ahead and go to View, Grids and Guides, and make sure our Show Guides is on. Mine is already on, because otherwise it would say hide. Mine says hide. Alright, so let's go do File and Place, and go to our Chapter 12 background. And let's grab our 12 background TIFF and say Open. And I'm going to get this loaded cursor. So I'm going to do Control plus, zoom in a little bit. I want to actually place it right here at this intersection where the bleed marks are. So click and place. Control minus. And this is a grayscale TIFF, which actually lets us play with it in a couple of really cool ways. So let's go to Window. Let's go to Color and Swatches. And let's go ahead and choose our fill color. And right now our switch are set at none. Let's go ahead and change it to this light green. And let's change our tint to about, well, it says 76. That's not really an about. 76. Enter. Alright, so now we want to actually color this green part as well. We can actually do that by playing with the donut part in the middle. So with our selection tool selected, click on the actual donut, and it will select the graphic frame instead. So let's go ahead, choose light green here, and take it and leave it at that 76. So now we've managed to change the frame, which is what's holding it, and the images within the frame. So we've actually colored the graphic. So that's a pretty cool thing to do. So we're done with the background layer. Let's go ahead and go to our layers. And let's go ahead and lock that background layer so we don't have to see it anymore. Alright, let's go ahead and do a Control S and save what we've got so far. So we're going to be playing quite a bit with the Effects panel today. So let's go to Window and Effects and see what we've got. So Window and Effects acts kind of similarly to the one in Photoshop. Here we've got our blending modes, we've got our opacity, and we see we've got an option to clear the effects, we can do more effects, we can delete them, we've got the ability to play with opacity. What's nice about the effects panel is it lets us apply effects on different elements of the artwork that we might not necessarily need to be able to do otherwise. Alright, so let's go ahead and go back to our layers, and we want to look at Art 1, so let's unlock Art 1. And let's make sure we can see Art 1, so turn it on. And let's go ahead and grab our selection tool. We're going to make sure our window and effects is open. So I'm going to go ahead, if you haven't already, just dock it over here to the side. I'm going to drag it here to the bottom so I can find it real easy. So let's go ahead and grab one of these guys. Let's grab this guy on the purple, this light green one, and let's take our opacity down. We can either use a slider or we can type it in. Let's take it into about 70. So now it's kind of translucent, kind of turns into kind of a muddy color. We're going to change the other colors as well. Let's go up here to the semicircle on the top, and let's change the opacity of that guy to about 50. Let's come down to this one, make him 60, enter. I'm going to grab this one down below it, the purple. Let's make it 70. Let's grab this one over on the right, We'll just leave him plain. And let's one on the bottom. Let's go ahead and make him 50 as well. All right, so we can obviously play with opacity the way you're pretty used to doing it. Now let's do some other things. Let's go ahead and play with some blending modes. Let's grab this yellow-green one right here. It's kind of a little bit gross. Let's go to our effects panel. And instead of normal, let's change it to overlay. So now it turns into a kind of a funky purple. Let's select the light green semicircle on the lower right half of the page. So let's grab this guy. And let's hold Shift and grab this other semicircle at the same time. So we can change both of those simultaneously. And instead of normal, let's go ahead and choose multiply. So it's actually going to darken those up for us a little bit. So you'll notice, you see we've got multiply mixed in here. So if I go here, I see 50%. I go here, oh, this one didn't change, so let's change it to multiply and change him to 50% as well. And let's type it in. All right, let's do a Control S and save what we've got so far. So we can add some transparency to some vector graphics as well. So these elements were all drawn in InDesign. Let's go with something that was not drawn in InDesign. Let's look at our layers. And let's lock one. Let's go ahead and look at two and unlock that. So we've got these swirls here that we need to play with. So I'm going to click my first swirl. I'm going to hit Shift. I'm going to hit my second swirl so I can play with both of those at once. So we want to make sure we're grabbing the elements, not the inside, the grabber inside. So we shift click, we've got both of them. Let's go to the effect panel and let's grab color dodge instead. And let's take our opacity down to about 30%. And that should work out pretty nicely. Now with our selection tool, let's grab those circular graphic frames with the fish. And let's play with the stroke of what we've got on the fish. So for the stroke, so it says normal 100 right here. We're actually going to play with it, and let's take it down. Now we can apply it differently. Let's play, and on the stroke, let's make it hard light. So we're making it a little bit different. We could also play with the opacity. So notice we can just apply those elements to just individual parts of that document. So let's do a Control S and save what we've got so far. Let's go into layers. Let's look at Art 3 and see our different options. We can make sure we unlock it so we can actually play with it. Switch, make sure it's blue. And let's grab the selection tool and let's select this kind of starburst that we've got going on. With the selection tool in the effects panel, let's take our opacity down to about 70%. Then we want to go ahead and grab the hand. We want to make sure we grab the content as well, so we bring it all the way in. We're going to go to the swatches panel. And let's go ahead and make our fill. Let's make it the red swatch. So we've made it kind of red. And it replaces the black now. So let's go to our effects panel and let's change it to screen. So we get kind of a different look above and below. So let's deselect, click out, and do a Control S and save what we've got there so far. So you can see there's a lot of different ways you can play with transparent effects here in Illustrator. So let's go ahead and import and play with some other files. So let's go ahead and in our layers file, make sure that we've got layer 3 as our art 3 is active and that we can see all 4 of our other layers. Let's go ahead and lock 1 and 2 and our background to make sure we don't accidentally mess with them. And let's deselect to make sure we don't have anything going on. Let's go to File and Place. And we want to make sure Show Import Options is on here at the bottom. And we want this one that says glasses.ai and say Open. So that's going to say, what do you want to do? Are there things you want to look at? So it says Crop To. We want to go ahead and say Bounding Box All Layers. And that transparent background is chosen. And say OK. So now we get that loaded vector right here, and we're going to go ahead and click and put it right here in that square we've got on the lower right hand corner. So let's go ahead and take a look at things we can do with that. Let's go ahead in our layers panel and hide Art1, Art2, and background. So you can just see the glasses. So with glasses selected, let's go to our effects. Let's change our opacity to about 60%. And let's choose color burn. And not a lot happens. And that happens because we can't see anything underneath it. In order for those color transparency blending modes to work, we actually need to be able to see something underneath. So let's go ahead and look at our layers. And let's go ahead and unlock and turn on those different layers and see how it looks differently. So we can actually see how those different layers play off each other. Let's go ahead and play with the type layer now. Let's do Control S and save what you've got so far. So let's grab with our selection tool. We want to go ahead and grab this I think, therefore I dine section. Make sure you're on the type layer and unlock it, otherwise it will not let you do it. Alright, do a Control plus so we can kind of see a little bit more. Alright, let's go ahead and make sure everything's visible. I'm going to go ahead and lock Art 3 so I can't actually do anything to it. And what are we going to do next? We want to go ahead from the Effects panel and we want to choose Overlay. We want our opacity to be about 70%. And we want our text. Go here and take our text and change that opacity to 70%. So you see we can actually change each of those individually, which is kind of a cool thing to do. All right, let's come down here to Boston, Chicago, and what we've got so far. Let's grab that box that it's in. And let's select the fill level in the effects panel. So we've got fill. And let's change our opacity of our fill. So let's grab our fill and change the opacity to 70%. Now notice it only changed the background. It did not change the letters as well. If we had text set as well, it would have changed those, but we don't want that. We only want the background box to be transparent. So let's do a Control S and save what we've got so far. Alright, let's play with some feathers and other things. Let's go ahead and do a view fit on page and see our whole window. Let's grab our selection tool and grab our light purple filled on over here, this guy, but right now it's not letting us click because that layer is locked. So let's go ahead and make sure Art 1 is unlocked and that we can click and grab that guy. Let's go to Object, come down here to Effects, and we want Basic Feather. So within Basic Feather we have a few different options, things we can play with. In our feather width box, let's go ahead and bump it up to 0.375 and change our choke value to 10%. If you leave it on preview, you can kind of see what's going on as you choose. And we're going to say noise, let's bump that up to about 10% and say OK. So now we've got kind of a cool border going on. So now let's apply a gradient feather. Let's grab our selection tool and grab this purple over on the right hand side. In the effects panel, let's go ahead and go to the effects here at the bottom and choose gradient feather. So it's right now showing us that we've got a light and a dark, and we don't necessarily want that. We want to reverse it, so let's reverse that gradient right here. So now it's going from light to dark this way, and it's okay. Let's say okay. Let's go and grab our gradient feather tool over in our toolbar, and notice how you can take and apply that gradient feather a few different ways within that box. If you hold shift, of course, you're going to get a straight up and down. So we want it to go from dark to light, so let's drag from the bottom to the top. So notice because we have just the one part selected, it's applying the feather in just that one section, which is pretty nice. Alright, so let's do a Control S and save. We want to go ahead and play with some other effects. Let's grab our selection tool and grab just the box that this word bistro is in. Within effects, let's go here to our effects and grab the one called drop shadow. Okay, so within drop shadow, we want to go ahead and make our size 0.125. We want to give it a 20% spread, so we want to make it relatively big. Make sure your preview is on so you can see what's going on. And we're going to leave everything else the same and say OK. So we can add just those shadows to certain parts because these are in different boxes, because they're in different frames. So we can apply effects to multiple objects, or multiple effects to one object as well. So let's go to our light green semicircle at the upper left corner here. And let's go to our FX button. Let's grab bevel and emboss. And for bevel and emboss, for our size, we want it to be 0.325. So click up. 3125. Let's do that one. Let's grab our soften. So make it softer. 3125 as well. And our depth at 30%. So you can see how that's changing as you go along. Now, before we get out of it, let's go ahead and switch to outer glow. Let's make our mode into multiply. Let's change our opacity to 80%. The size to 0.25, so got to go up quite a bit. And our spread to 10%. So you can see now how you can apply multiple, and we know it's got multiple effects because both things are checked when we go through here. So let's go ahead and say, oh, we want to set the glow color as well. So this outer glow, instead of being white, I want to double click it and let's make it black instead. Now we can say OK. So now we can copy those effects between different objects. So let's grab our hand tool and make sure we fit on the page. So if you double click your hand tool, if this was scrolled out a whole bunch, if you double click hand, it'll fit it on the page for you, which is kind of cool. With the effects open, let's go to the object level. So we see here we've got this object multiply with this little FX here. We can take and drag. Let's grab our, make sure our element is selected that we want to copy from. Let's grab this FX and drag it onto that element right there, down there at the bottom. So you can actually take and drag. We can drag it over here, except that one's locked. Let's go ahead and unlock everything, make it a little easier. Let's grab that FX and drag it to that little bubble as well. Oh, grab the wrong one. So we want to grab, let's grab our selection. Where is that guy? Alright, so we want to go ahead and lock blue so we can grab green. There we go. So grab this, FX. This is where having those layers locked works really well. And drag it on to that bubble as well. So instead of having to repeat all those steps, you can basically drag and copy and make your life a lot easier. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at something else we can do. Let's go File, Open Recent, and bring that Start one back up again. Let's go to Window, Arrange, and Tile. So now we've got our first one. Let's grab a rectangle and make a rectangle on that Start menu. What we can do is go back into our menu that we just created, select Oh, here's this one. We want to grab the menu and grab that FX. We can grab that FX from here and take it into another file and drop it in and apply those effects from one thing. Oh, doesn't have any color to it. It's part of the problem. So on this start one, let's go in, give it a color, make it green. Let's do it on page 2. Let's go to page 2 of this one. All right, go to page 2 and let's draw. And because the layers are locked, it's not letting me. Cancel. Oh, I can't see it. All right, now let's draw a box. Now I can take from, select this guy down here and grab that effects, grab this, drag it up, and automatically apply it. So I can move an effect from one document into another, which is pretty convenient. All right, we don't actually want to save that, so just close it. All right, I'm going to go and close my end one because I don't need it. I'm going to hit save on what I've got so far. So you can decide, I don't like something, I don't want it to be that way anymore. If we go ahead and double click the effects, you can always go in and uncheck and change those effects as you go along. So it's easy enough to go through, move it. Maybe you want to change that effect. So your, what do we have? Outer glow. You can change those things from one thing to another once you've got it all created. So maybe you don't want to have something, you can easily go back with using these blending modes to create your document. So you can hit W, see your incredibly wonderful transparent menu. Do a control save and make sure you turn in a packaged file for this one.